Doctor, so you said the lasers, when we were discussing the genetics all the weeks ago, and I asked those questions. So basically you were saying the lasers could help those people?
Yep.
Wow. So you knew that all along? You were gearing us up for this?
I guess you could say that. I don't know that I knew it all along. I wasn't necessarily, I don't have my schedule planned out for what I'm going to talk about each week. It just kind of happened. But as I was putting this together and going through that study, I was like, oh, wow, that is serendipitous that it happens to connect to what we've talked about recently. So yeah, it's another tool to help us, deal with the epigenetics or the expression and non-expression of those genes.
I'm convinced you might be some sort of higher power or something. I don't know what's going on here, man. You might be something else. I don't know, man.
We'll see. I appreciate it. If I live past 100, we'll see.
I think you will. You know what?
Meet me there.
That's my goal.
Dr. B, you had said that 6 sessions twice a day for 3 days only.
And
go
ahead.
What is, so I mean, 6 sessions, how long is a session?
So, well, for this study, so they broke it down in this study. They did 1, 2, 3. They did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they had 6. So the thyroid's a butterfly-shaped gland on your neck. Okay, so they marked 6 different points on the thyroid, and they did 20 seconds at each location was a session. Okay.
20 seconds.
Yeah. So they were putting in 2, which basically in laser lingo, it's how much power, how much energy did you give to the tissue. So that was giving 2 joules to each location. Okay. So they did that. So they did that 6 sessions twice daily for a total of 3 days. And that accumulated to 96 joules over time in there. So different studies would do different things, or, clinically we would do more. I would do it differently because we're using, like, my tool is different than their tool. So you can apply, different tools have different powers and frequencies that you're working at.
And is cold laser therapy the same as red light therapy, or is that something different?
Red light would be one form of cold laser. So cold laser is visual light and all the way out to infrared. Whereas like hot lasers would be lasers that can burn you, or surgical lasers. And so those are more like gamma ray lasers and things like that. So the cold part means I could hold it on you and I'm never going to burn you, or I'm not going to burn your carpet or cut through, table fabric or anything. And I've used those lasers before. I had one, or my school had one when I was in school, and they're pretty cool and powerful, but really it's a different, the power, like a hot laser is more powerful, obviously. So if you leave it on the skin, you could damage someone, and you might be able to get results a little bit faster, but there's that risk. Whereas the cold laser, I could hold it on you all day and you're not going to burn. So the difference is it's visible light into infrared. So infrared, we can't see as humans, but we can measure it. It's there. And the wavelength, visible light wavelength is in the 600 to 7 something nanometers. And then the 7 something plus goes into the infrared.
We did this on Noel's knee a handful of times, but we didn't have like a specific plan, like twice a day for 3 days. We didn't, it was like once every, it was kind of just I don't know, there wasn't a specific plan. And I know this is about Hashimoto's, and our family is more of an arthritis, swollen joint kind of situation, but
Yeah. That's okay. It's laser. So ask it.
yeah, I guess I don't really know what my question is. I'd be curious to know what a protocol would be. Like, hey, you need to come every other day or every day, or and how, I don't know, what success could be had.
Yeah. So
I have a hypothetical rhetorical question.
yeah. So the protocol, can vary depending on how quickly you want to get the change, right? And how much time do you have to put energy in a given time frame, right? So I stick to around 20-minute treatment periods just because it works for our schedule. But like here with my dad, I just went over to his house and set him up and ate my lunch while he was getting laser. So I was probably there for an hour, So for Noel, if we're talking about that, we'd probably do 20-minute type segments, because that's just what works for the ecology of the office. And maybe do 2 or 3 times a week for 2 or 3 weeks, depending which, 2 times a week for 3 weeks, or 3 times a week for 2 weeks, and observe for her range of motion, gait, maybe swelling level or pain, if those are involved. I was working out recently and we were doing burpees, and I had the barbell next to me because we had to do deadlifts and then do lateral burpees over the bar. And on one of the burpees, I went to straighten out my legs and my foot hit the weight. And the weight didn't move. So my knee went down and hit the floor, and I just kept going. And I was like, oh, that's annoying, but it didn't hurt. But then later the next day I started to feel swelling in my right knee. So I did, I think I did 2 nights in a row. I did 20 minutes with it, and I didn't have any swelling anymore, or feel any swelling anymore on that, 3rd day. And again, that's a acute injury, not a potentially inflammatory systemic inflammatory process. But again, it doesn't have to necessarily take a long time. And then another difference with the lasers is these lasers were, I love it because the guys who made them, they're the only lasers made by functional neurologists, and functional neurologists are super nerdy, awesome guys who like to have research behind everything. And so in the programming of the lasers, you could take a red light, to Karen's question. You could get under a laser pointer that you're using at a presentation, and if you want to hold it on yourself for months, you'll get change. But they're not powerful. But all light works. But then it depends on the power of the light, the frequency of the light, the depth of penetration. So these guys made these lasers there's 500 different settings on them. I could do knee pain, acute inflammation, chronic inflammation, thyroid, brain type stuff, sexual health stuff. There's all kinds of different settings. So on me, I set one of them on knee pain. I set the other one on inflammation modulation, and I did 20 minutes 2 days in a row and knocked it out. So on thyroid, I would use a thyroid setting, of course, because that's the tissue we're trying to impact. And that tissue responds to a different frequency than a knee does, or a vagus nerve does, or a prefrontal cortex does. Make sense? I've had other lasers in the past that don't have that specificity in terms of frequencies that match up to tissues. And yeah, you can still get results, but it's not as quick because I'm putting it into the tissue. And if I'm trying to get, say, a liver, or say a microbiome, I have to, lots of tissue is absorbing that light before it gets to the microbiome. Whereas if I'm at a specific frequency for the microbiome, other tissues don't care about that frequency as much as the microbiome does, or the knee does, or whatever specific one we're doing. Does that make sense?
You got to your knee right away, and Emily, I don't know if you got to, was it your husband's knee or
Noel,
someone's knee?
her daughter.
Noel, your daughter?
Daughter, yeah.
What if you had Hashimoto's for years? Does the laser not work as well, or is there a certain point where it's like you've had it for too long, or is it all good?
I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine, matter has limitations, so I can't necessarily, you're going to get benefit if it's going to reduce inflammation and increase the hormone function, you're going to get benefit on some level, but just how much, how much would vary if you've had it for, say, 5 years versus 40 years, maybe. For your reference, the average age in the study was 37 plus or minus 8 years. So it ranged from 29 to 45. Okay. But it doesn't say how long they've had it. So I'm not sure on that. But so yeah. But in terms of injury, there's acute inflammation settings, which would be 3 days or less, like, hey, I just banged my knee, this is new. And there's chronic inflammation settings, so anything longer than 3 days, 3 days or 10 years, so
Okay.
what else?
So laser can be specific to a specific point or issue.
Yep.
But if you're going and doing, say, like a full body red light session,
Mhm.
it's not going to be kind of as concentrated to a specific area, but you're still going to exhibit or be able to partake in some of these benefits. Just
Yep.
from the full.
Yep, because you're still hitting the kidney beans.
Okay.
Right, you're still hitting the mitochondria, so you're promoting overall increased ATP production. And you can do this for performance or wellness because on the general treatment like you're talking about, Michelle, if you're increasing ATP overall, that's more energy for the body to do what the body needs to do, and your body knows better than us, right, consciously what it needs to do. So it's still, hey, here's a laser shot, which might be equivalent to, hey, here's a B12 shot, or here's a whatever other thing you're going to do for an energy boost, right? Here's some creatine, or so yeah, you can go get a big red light thing and stand in front of it, or like an infrared sauna, right? The sauna is heat, but what you don't realize is infrared is on the light spectrum. You just can't see it. So that is, on some levels, laser therapy.
So if you have access to, and I was given a 1 month session for a full body red light session, how often would you say to go during that month?
As much as you can get in there.
Okay.
If it's unlimited, yeah, go. Again, what's going to happen? Are you going to have too much energy?
Gotcha.
So
But what would be a good, let's rephrase that. Let's say if it's something that I see benefit from in this first month trying it, going into like maintenance to do it every month, how many times per week? Is like 1 to 2 times a week good? Or the sessions are about 20 minutes each.
okay, so you can't just go sit there. You can just go to as many 20-minute sessions, maybe one a day, probably.
Right.
For people. Okay. Yeah, obviously, if you've got an unlimited month, you stack it up, and then maybe pay attention to, okay, here's day 1 that I went 2, 3, 4, and okay, I'm at day 9 and I'm really feeling good. And then keep notes day 9 to 30 when it's over. Did you notice a big difference? And then, hey, 9 days got me there. So maybe you go twice a week, after that over the month, or, 9 sessions a month. I don't know. Or maybe you finish the month and then you see how long you can go before that energy you gain drops, so there'll be a little bit of trial and error, but, if price and all that stuff doesn't matter, I'd do it as much as you can. Like I do this every day. In the morning, I wake up and I'm doing a certification right now to doesn't matter, but it's an internship, an internist, to be an internist. But anyways, so I get up in the morning and study for an hour and a half before my kids wake up, because then it's all over. So while I'm doing it, I'm doing 15 minutes on my brain. I do, and then I do 20 minutes on the microbiome around my gut. And then there's some like wellness different points. There's a thing called a bioillumination protocol where you do your carotids in your abdominal aorta, because your blood passes by, through your body every minute. So you can laser, say, your whole blood supply, and promote the oxygenation, the anti-inflammation, that sort of thing. So if you have, I have lasers, so I have access to that. But I'm just saying that to you to say, I'm doing it every day for about 40 minutes to an hour. And I'm, again, there's no real side effects as long as you're not shining it in your eye.
Hey, so you're just putting the lasers directly onto you, like, and where do you get them from?
Yeah, so for the purpose of the picture, I have them pulled off my dad here a little bit so you can see it. Yeah. Right? But you really want it on the tissue, because light can be interfered with. So the more space between the laser and the tissue you're trying to get the light to, the more interference and the more it can bounce off and things like that. So yeah, you want it touching, as best you can, because then you're driving it into the tissue. And different tissues have what are called chromophores in biology, which is basically these receptors for light. So the laser helps hit those chromophores and stimulate what they do. On my son here, a foot has a weird shape, so it's hard to put a laser, say, smoothly on a foot, especially a little 2-year-old foot. So there's you can see some light there just because the whole laser isn't, up against the foot cleanly.
So where do you, do you think that would help me, or where do you?
I think not yet. Once we're ready for the microbiome rebuilding part, right now you need to kill.
Okay.
But once we're ready to rebuild, yeah, in regards to the gut, in regards to the microbiome and the probiotics, not yet. I think it could benefit you potentially from a vagus nerve perspective, because the vagus drives the motility, right? And so we could use the vagus nerve frequencies and do that and see, right now, does that help? See, that's why it's cool that there's different things you can do. If this were just a laser that has one frequency and it's like, hey, just put it on, then it's like, it's better than nothing. But we can be specific with, if our goal with Jarrell is microbiome, then we'd put it on that setting. If we want to stimulate the vagus and target motility and decrease GI inflammation, we'd do that, right? If we were going after H. pylori, we could set it for H. pylori, so there's like, it gets real specific. It's cool.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Oh.
Niraj, I saw you starting to ask a question a bit ago.
I did. I was just wondering, many of the benefits which you showed in the body chart, many of them also come with the sunlight. So, I was just thinking here, of course, it's not focus, but it's a natural solution, and there's no cost to that. So I would think, of course, right now we're in the winter time, but in the summer, just take the sunlight and many of these benefits are there.
Yeah, and that just becomes intensity and time, right? How you'll have to lay under the sun a lot longer to affect, the laser. But again, it's free, right? But all light works, like I said earlier. So it's just time of exposure, intensity, that sort of thing. And again, this is laser therapy would be like a paleo or an ancestral treatment, right? Because light was our original laser, right? We were all out there naked at the equator running in circles. Maybe we had a loincloth on, but we were lacking the sexual help when we did that. But so we have chromophores, right? And the sunlight stimulates those chromophores. So whether it's sunlight or a laser pointer or a medical grade laser, you know, it all is doing something, but it's just how quickly do we want to get there and how specific do we want to be?